Okay, so why don't we do this by seniority? Even though well, we're not all first-term counselors here, but the guests are. Anyway, first up, Ward 4 Counselor Linda Busuttil. Thank you for joining me once again, Linda.
Thank you for having me.
And from the Ward 6, Ward 6 Counselor, Katherine Hauser. Katherine, thank you for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'll start with you, Linda. And one of the reasons I paired the two of you, as you know, is you both come from school board experience. So having come from that world, which is similar but different in terms of like procedure and operations, but I mean also kind of the same. Can you talk a bit about the transition from school board to council and how maybe how that differed from your or how being on city council, I guess, differed from your school board experience in terms of acclimatizing to being at city hall instead of the school board.
You want me to start?
Yes,
If I can.
please. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. You alluded to the procedures and the governance, and absolutely right. Bylaws and committees and those kinds of structures and decision making, similar. So I think that's a strength that experience both Catherine and I bring to our role. We understand about integrity and all of those code of conducts and so on. Coming from school board to council, I was a school board trustee for 16 years. It, it the transition, I would say, the biggest thing for me was a budget.
Mm.
And so, as a school board trustee, the budget in education is pretty prescriptive. It's here's what you're getting. It's for textbooks or it's for school improvements and so on. It's very controlled. We used to call it sweatered. So you're going to get this amount, you have to use it on that. There's actually hardly any discretionary funding. The other thing that I would say is very similar, and it's why I'm running again, is I noticed over my term in public education is the changes through regulations around our ability to do things for local communities, going from bricks, budget, and bargaining to centralized bargaining, and the decisions around capital projects being centralized. And I see that happening in education for sure, but see that happening as well with municipal decisions and so on. So, a bit of a concern about that, or a concern around that after being sworn in. Um, Things were changed around how I envisioned my role in connecting and doing things in Ward 4 in the city of Guelph to the reality, which is more of, wrists together kind of thing, tied together and your ability to do things.
For sure. And Catherine, you come at this because you joined council in the middle of the term, so you didn't get a chance to like go through orientation, with the crowd, and you've had and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you've had to more of a baptism by fire than even your fellow first term counselors. How have you managed that experience?
So I didn't have the group orientation, but I did have individual orientations, like basically all through August. Was just onboarding, and I would meet 6 people on a Teams meeting every day, and trying to just the org chart, like putting it all together. And I would think, okay, we must be getting done soon. Like I must have I must have seen every department. I must have all of the things in place. And then next week I would have full slate of meetings again. And so the sheer volume of information that I've picked up in the last year has been incredulous. It's a lot. Yeah, and one of the reasons where I am running again is, I mean, I have worked so hard to keep up and get caught up and figure everything out. It would be such a waste to lose all of that, or to not be
Yeah.
able to use all of that knowledge. So that's why I'm here too. I mean, we brought a lot of things, basics from the school board over, but the sheer volume is way different for sure.
I think you both took part in, a lot of these like campaign schools and you know these community things that we do to prepare people to run for office. When you, and again, it's interesting given your school board experience, but when you get into city council, do you feel like you're well prepared? And Catherine, I'll start with you. Do you feel, again, baptism by fire, do you feel like you were well prepared to like the, you talked about the volume, but not just like the volume, but like having to be suddenly become an expert on like parks and rec policy because of this one report that addresses like ice availability of ice rinks. That's one piece of one department in one massive $500 million corporation. Do you feel like you're well prepared to to be suddenly become an ice rink expert on the fly?
Right. Or like the upcoming bridge, like
The
we have,
bridge.
you so what I found is I have to ask really good questions and I have to do the research and figure it all out. So for me, like, for example, let's use the bridge. There's a lot of history there that I have to go pick up. Like I've heard about it just from being, a resident of Guelph for a long time. And I know these things, but I don't know all of the actual facts and everything that's come to council before now. So I have to go back and figure all of that out and ask all of the right questions to the right people. It is a lot. It's hard to become an expert in. I mean, I'm not an engineer. I didn't do bridge building, so that's that's a big learning curve too. And just trying to listen, I think, to that's the main point. I think is just trying to listen to where people want to go with some things, like even like parks and recreation. Like it sounds really easy. Oh yeah, that
Mm,
makes. But then another person has a completely different view of it, and then there's a factual, there's a non-factual, and then you just wading through all of the sheer volume of information to decipher what's accurate is daunting. But yeah, no, I'm not an expert. I will never be an expert. I will try to navigate everything as good as I can. That's the real part of it.
Linda, how about you?
Yeah, and I like the word that Catherine used, which is navigate. So, as a first-time city councilor, I would say the first term is I'm leaving the first term, not yet, but leaving the first term with a good understanding of how things work. And as Catherine referred to, what are the systems and who to go to get, corporate history on things, whether it's a colleague or someone who is a staff. I think the other thing is I know through education years and education, community involvement, stuff like that, bringing a wider perspective to things. And one of the stories that I tell people is when we were looking at the Greener Homes initiative is because of my community work to say, that's great to have these grants for greening your home, but I remember a conversation with some seniors that don't have $23,000 to put up front to pay and
Right.
get reimbursed later. So I think both of us, because public education is really connected to community and to families, lots of conversations at the school level and things like that, is we bring that voice and that perspective to those conversations at the city that maybe some of our colleagues, I'm sure they have that as well, but we bring it to the forefront.
Before getting into, I want to explore that a bit further, but before that, I had this occur to me as Catherine was talking. Um, counselors have access to the staff. You get the reports, and you may have questions, and it may be questions that like are important to your community, and it may be questions that you just have because you're an inquisitive person and you want all the answers. But when it comes to the performative aspect of being a counselor, when do you decide like when is it enough just for me to send an email to like say Colleen Clark Bush and then get my answer back? And at what point is it better in terms of like you know I guess leadership opportunity to ask it in front of the full council on camera so that people can see for themselves? And I'll start with you, Linda.
I love that. I believe that engagement at city council as a delegation is absolutely to ask those questions, especially for some of our members of the community who don't have that access, who don't know how to do things, to bring their concerns forward. And as you were saying that, I wrote down the one that most recently resonated with me is, the systemic way of parking and parking issues or
Mm,
road issues and so on. Well, it's generated by complaints. Well,
right.
Ward 4, where I am, I have conversations with people in the food hub and everywhere else who don't know there's a reported problem, who don't know who to call. So if that is our input for our plans and our priority setting, we're never going to, we're here, we're here, we're here. And so staff, yes, access to staff, but I do like the piazza of coming out to city council and saying, I was almost hit by a car at Willow and Westwood Road. This happens all the time. We need safety because the systems that we as city councilors and the staff put together need to have that equity lens throughout the whole city. And I believe the University of Guelph's review equity-wise of that process did identify gaps, which is great. However, the reality is the plans for the next couple of years have all those other people and all those other complaints in the queue, and the needs here are once again not being met.
I'll throw this back to you, Katherine. How important do you feel, or how important is it to you to sort of be seen asking the question as opposed to just getting the answer? Is there a difference between those two things, or it doesn't matter because you just get the answer the same?
So I usually ask my questions beforehand. Sometimes I do believe being performative and asking the same question, whether you know the answer to it or not, drives things home.
Mm-hmm.
It allows staff to kind of address something specific, or you address something specific to highlight it. I don't believe in talking to hear yourself talk to get sound bites. That drives me bananas.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll never do that. Like I won't be the one that's just talking so that I get attention that way.
Would you like to name names?
No, 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 I don't. But at the same time, yeah, so I don't want to get myself in trouble here. But there's definitely there's been a big uptick about that too. That happened during this election process. That's suddenly already started, and I feel like I just got here, but it's starting. And I do understand that it's important for me to use my voice and say things, but most of the time I have kind of things figured out the way I want to. Sometimes residents will ask me to specifically bring forward an issue or a complaint,
Sure.
and that for sure I will address. Oftentimes I find that my questions have been answered in the reports or in the readings. I usually have read everything at least like 3 times, usually by the time I get to a meeting. So it's like, if I don't know the answer, I've already asked. So that's, I guess, preparation is kind of really important as well. Like knowing what it is that's coming to the floor that day and having a good understanding of it, I think is really important too. So I might not ask questions, but it's not because I don't know what's happening. I'm usually very well prepared. So that's the difference.
Linda wanted to follow up on that too.
Yeah, sorry. And I would agree with Katherine. I don't do the aha gotcha to staff. But if someone has an issue, I think it's part of our responsibility to encourage people to get engaged in the process. And so whether I agree or not, come out and delegate. We'll explain how to do that, because I think more people delegating that identify with others in the community say, hey, I've got an issue too. I want to come out there. And we need to educate the public on how to do that in a way it's constructive.
Yeah, I've been encouraging a lot of people to delegate, like just come. And I think it's so important for people to hear each other talk, and get everyone out of their silos and listening to everyone else too, because everyone thinks they have the answer and this is the way it should be done, but they haven't looked at it from this side or this perspective or this lens. And it's so important to have everyone's voice heard, I think.
I want to dig deeper into that in a sec, but to push back on you, Linda, on something you said, I think it was on the ice rig thing where there were the delegates who keep coming up and you keep asking them the same question. Is there not a bit of performance in that? And I guess how do you make that calculation? It's like I'm trying to make a point and I need to do this in the performative way of like asking everybody the same question because this is the thing we're getting hung up on.
Right. And in that specific, I believe what you're referring to is, have you contacted a private partner and a private option? Because I hear often from people that they have been told that no, that the city's not interested in a private. And when I talk to the staff, they say, no, we're quite happy to have a, sorry, just turning the printer off, have a private partnership. Sorry. Okay,
Th-
guys, can you cancel, please?
This is great content, by the
Ah,
way.
uh, try to, sorry, action packed, right?
Linda's in a busy community group
A
office right
community
now,
room right
so yeah,
now.
yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, just trying to bring that conversation out into the open to say, you say no, or you say yes, you say yes. You guys get together and have the staff respond to that in public to deal with that mutual learning and that opportunity. So yeah, it was a bit performative, but I think it's important to do.
All right, I did have this question down, and then Catherine kind of opened the door to it, which is, there's in monitoring the election as it's been so far, there's been a lot of back and forth about, city council isn't doing this or city council isn't focused on that. And I guess when going into this as the incumbent, and we big elections, big and small, elections haven't been kind to incumbents lately, but when you're talking about, the things that you do and the things that you haven't done as a city councilor, I mean, how do you frame that? I mean, there are people who are deeply mad about things, understandably so. It's their community, and then there are people who also have access to the game of telephone on Facebook, where somebody makes a post about something and you get like 11 completely wrong responses and maybe one that's half right. And Catherine, I'll start with you. In terms of like communicating the accomplishments or the decisions of council, how hard has that been for you, given, our information ecosystem?
It is really hard because there is such a vacuum of misinformation, and people don't really want to get out of it. And I see posts all the time, and I am not going to put myself out there and comment on everything. I don't think that's my place. I think we've talked about this in council meetings about we need a way for like accurate information to be readily available. So like after a meeting, somebody doesn't go running with what they think happened and it's not true or it's false or it's twisted, like we need a place where the actual facts happen. Like I had a meeting the other day and it was about the 33% raise that the councillors gave each other. And I'm like, that didn't happen. Like that wasn't, no. And it was like almost like I was being accused of lying. And I'm like, that no, it's not, that wasn't, that didn't happen. That was voted down. It
Mm.
went through lots of negotiations. And then, it got landed on a much, 11 or something, whatever it was, doesn't matter. It's wasn't the 33 that everybody's still upset about. So I think I got lost track of where you were asking me to go with.
Well, why don't we throw it to Linda, because Linda, you also have the added margin of error of people in your neighborhood who for whom English is not a first language. A number of new Canadians live in the Willow Road area.
Yeah, and I think what you're alluding to about the information ecosystem, it's polluted. That's the only word that I can think of. And we there's a group of us counselors that are part of something called Strong Cities, where we're trying to get ahead of communication. How do we get ahead of the misinformation? How do we do that? And when I first ran for city council, and I still want to do this, I believe that we as counselors have to have central city communication that I am able to grab and say, this is what's happening in our ward, a priority. Sports fields. Sports fields don't open until whatever date, right? Just trying to do that because people look for reliable sources. The City of Guelph website, and people don't want to hear this, but it's horrible to navigate. It's just, and as a city councilor, it's just horrible to navigate. So us as councilors to get ahead of that, working with the city communication to plain language and make it relevant for individuals. Now, one of the things you were saying about communicating accomplishments, I'm going to take, issue to that because some of the accomplishments have nothing to do with me as a city councillor. And as a,
Mm.
Ward 4 activist, I can tell you it took 18 years to get the splash pad in Ward 4, moving from the goose pond behind the fire station at the West End Recreation Center took get in queue, get in line, and the parks plan and everything else. So, being engaged as a citizen it's like carrying the stick a little bit further and trying, the crosswalk and everything else, because all of these plans, you have to get in queue, especially for all the capital plans, whether it's parks or things. So the accomplishments are before and outside of my 4-year term, right?
For sure. Which sort of brings me to re-election talk, and both of you have tagged in relatively early. So Linda, in terms of you're wanting to run again, and you mentioned this before that the job changed significantly between when you got elected and when you had your first meeting. Was there any doubt in your mind that this was going to be a multi-term project, being a counselor after, or you want it to be a multi-term project? We're not supposing um, any victories on October 27th, but are you have you experienced like any moment of like, well, this isn't really the job I had in mind because of everything that's been thrown at you that you weren't expecting?
Yeah, no, definitely the lay of the land changed after being sworn in. But I think my purpose in running was to raise, equity and ensure that when we're looking at plans and priorities, that as the example I gave you around the parking study, and it is complaints that drive the input. This term also gave me the opportunity to analyze how the system works and
Mm,
try to position that. So, you know, I, I- I'm not gonna, say it's multi terms, but I'm running again because, I want to try to do something here, but also you, in your first question, just before this one about the information and communication, I do think that I understand this community just from my involvement and so on, of the best way to engage accurately with accurate information individuals in the community and have that two-way kind of dialogue. So
mhm.
yes, I'm running again.
And Catherine, again, you come in midstream after present council's already had to eat a lot of changes. But I mean, have you had a moment of like, why did I leave the school board? I mean, maybe not given what's been going on at the school board,
Right.
but any moment of doubt?
Um, yeah, because I was like, I don't know, I was feeling a little bit of pressure that, I didn't deserve it and I didn't belong there, because of the way the appointment process did go. So I was like, I could go back to the school board. I think I would love that. That would be great. It's the volume of work is significantly less,
Right.
but the engagement with the people and that type of thing is very similar. So that part is really great. And I could see myself going back there for sure, but it's not an environment that's welcoming right now at all. And I don't think, I mean, there's a really good chance it won't even exist. And I really
Hmm.
keep this like public advocacy going. Like, I really feel like I have a purpose and I really need a purpose. Like, I need to be needed and I need to have something to be doing. And I really love advocating for other people as well. So I would hate to just lose that momentum that I've built. So yeah, I'll be running for sure.
Hmm. All right. Well, let's talk about. I don't want to get too deep into issues and things, but there are. I found it interesting that there were two other first-term counselors who were like, "No, we're good, we're out," and Aaron and Michelle have their reasons, and if people want to revisit those reasons, we already did a pod about that. But can you talk a bit about sort of why you're running for reelection and not necessarily about the issues that are important to you, but like in terms of like why you feel it's important to keep going. And maybe even in the face of a lot of people in this community who, I mean, there were always people, and 10 years of reading Guelph Today's taught me anything. There's always someone in a comment section will say vote them all out. But it there is appetite in the community for changing how things are. So when you're making your pitch this fall, and I'll start with you, Catherine, why should your constituents hold on to you as a representative?
I just got here.
Fair
That's why.
enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I whenever I say that to get rid of everyone, I'm like, not me. I just no, I just really feel like it would be so when I ran for the council position, I did so on the fact that I could give my voice. They've already voted me in. I already was representing all of Ward 6. I had been doing it for 3 years. I felt like I was a safe option for them because they already had me working for them for 3 years. So I felt like I could continue that role in a capacity, fill that gap for the year, and we'll see what happens. But that momentum has just kept building. Like I still have been making all of these connections. I've, you know, I don't want to stop. Like I've built a lot of really good, like community friends and partners, and I've learned so much. So, like I'm just starting, I feel, and I want to just keep going and keep representing as best I can.
Linda, Catherine is a dynamo and is a juggernaut and is going to keep going. How about you?
Yeah, well, and I'm pretty active in the community, whether I'm a city councilor, school board trustee, it doesn't matter. And I think the reason that I'm running is that I don't like what I'm seeing in terms of regulations and changes to our communities that we have no control over. And when I think about, planning processes, and I'll pick on parks, right? I tell people that the way that things are systems are structured now, that whether it's development charges not available for parks and parkland acquisition, you family who's going to move into a new development, you're not going to get a park. You're going to get a parkette. You're
Mm.
going to get a parkette. So there are values that I hear from communities that talk about whole, vibrant, good, healthy neighborhoods that I am deeply concerned about because, as I said to you, those changes that are happening. And so I don't like the imbalance and the power given to developers. I don't like what the city says. I'm just going to take you to the OLT. That concerns me. So I feel obligated to stand up and like fire me. Like it doesn't matter to me, but we need to speak up. And I think I used the term once, Pottersville. We're going to end up with neighborhoods that look like Pottersville with development that's out of control. And then, unintended consequences of parking and garbage and all these other kinds of things that it sounds good on paper that we're stimulating, but the reality at the end of the day is that it's not materializing. And my question is, at what cost to neighborhoods and families?
You raise a good point, and sorry, Catherine, you go ahead.
No, no, good.
Okay, well, just to follow up on that, and I'll have Linda, since you brought it up, the centralization of stuff. We've seen that at conservation authorities. We're seeing that at school boards. We're seeing that at police now because the Ontario government, and I haven't seen a lot of reporting about it, which makes me think it's going under the radar, which is not great. That the Solicitor General is going to be able to deke into police boards and say, well, you should really be looking at this and not that. You should be doing more X and less Y. Um, is that something, even if people are only like subconsciously aware of it? Because again, one of the other things is I've seen another Ward 6 council candidate making this point repeatedly that uh, we need more people participating in local government. 27% of eligible voters voting for council is not enough. And I think we can all agree on that. But is the centralization argument, is that having an impact? And is that, as you're talking to more people and they're hearing like, well, as a city councilor, I'm having less power because the province is scooping it all up. Is that going to be an encouragement for people to get out and vote this fall, do you think?
I think so. I think the advocacy piece is huge. I really think, honestly, the whole appointment process, I think, really did something. Like besides myself, we had 25 other people who are also many of them throwing their hat into this election as
That's true.
well.
That's
Like
true.
it's ramped up, and there's been a lot of attention. I think that can only be good. Like the more people that are paying attention at the municipal level, they'll be paying more attention to the provincial level, and it just will snowball. And it's so important to keep those issues at the forefront and making sure it doesn't get out of control, and making sure nothing is flying under the radar or slipping past. That's really, really important. And that's part of why I really want to keep doing this as well, to keep that voice going and keeping that advocacy going for sure.
Linda?
Centralization, absolutely. I saw it over the 16 years in public education, trying to raise this as an issue. Be careful, be careful, be careful. Centralization, I was part of the centralized bargaining process and so on. And now with the changes to school boards, it's not even to locally elected trustees, it's now the directors of education's association that's doing that. So centralization. But I would say the biggest red flag I have for centralization, well, two, I would say is water. And the pilot project that is proposed by the provincial government to, hey, we're going to be involved in water. Why? Because water is a handmaiden to the limitations or not limitations around development. And we see that in Waterloo and so on. So for me, I'm very concerned about that. And all we can do as local politicians is raise concern, raise concern, raise concern at AMO and other bodies and so on, that people have to understand how the things are connected. Well, what does water have to do with me? Right? It's all those kinds of the domino effects. So centralization, huge concern. And I see it in public health and the GRCA, all of those kinds of areas. And really, at the end of the day, if centralization is everything's going to be centralized at the provincial level, why are we here? Why are we here? Other than what I used to say in the school board is bricks, budget, and bargaining all centralized is the last B, which is bullseye. So we're here when people are upset and want someone to scream and yell at. That is what I'm seeing happening in municipal government.
So the provincial government is scapegoating our councils, is what you're saying.
Yes, very nicely said.
Okay, good. I feel set up for that one. Sorry, Katherine, go ahead.
No, I just said and school boards.
And school boards, yeah. All right. Looking at your own records, and I'm kind of want to wind down our time here, but can you give me, and we'll start with you, Katherine, can you give me something that you are, granted, you've had limited time to put points on the board, but can you talk about something you're proud of in terms of your work on city council, and then maybe something you could have done better?
I'm really proud of the work I've done just talking with residents and navigating where to help them get help, or where they've, just navigating where to go. Like that has been most of my emails are little problem solving, but all of them are different problems and they all have to go different places, and figuring all of that out and like who to ask and where to go has been huge. And I know it's little tiny, those are just small little things, but those things add up and they mean a lot to people. I find that like just listening is so important, like more than talking and more than doing things, just listening and taking those issues and problems and trying to help people navigate those has been really one of the things I like the best, and I think I do a really good job of. What could I do better? Go to Linda. I'll think about that one.
All right, Linda, you're on.
So
I worked hard and I'm doing a good job. So I'll
yeah. This is like a job interview, right?
Yeah.
Where what's your weakness, right? So
Yeah.
I know what mine is. My do better is I am terrible at social media. I'm not good at that. I try to do my best, but it's hard for me to figure out which button to push. However, I do, and in Italian we say chiacchiera, lots of talking to people. So I would say I'm very proud of the splash pad, but as I alluded, that started, 18 years ago. But the crosswalk, in conversation with the mayor who added it to the budget, we got the crosswalk because you can't have high density along Westwood with no access to cross the road safely to use the amenities there. I'm most proud of our work on social services and the Joint Social Services Committee, that when I used to go to it as a volunteer, I was sitting on the sides. Now we have a joint committee, and I'm hoping that we can continue to work together to build, a housing plan and childcare plan and a number of other things. I'm also very happy with the equity lens that I try to keep my feet on the ground and bring to conversations. And like Katherine, advocacy and connecting people of where to go.
All right, I feel like I could be better at social media is like the I'm too giving, I'm too dedicated answer to the job interview quest.
Yeah, I don't know how to even use Facebook. I'm never sure about Facebook or stories and posts and whatever else. So
All right, fair
not
enough.
something I spend time doing.
Fair enough. I wonder if Catherine thinks I might have forgotten about her second half of the question, so I'm gonna turn it back over.
I actually wanted to go back to the one of the things I'm proud of, and one of the first times I ever actually used my voice and had it matter was we were talking about the GID, and like the park was across a busy arterial road from the school, and I just couldn't figure that out. Like, why is that? But I'm like, well, these people are planners and they're so much smarter than I am. But I'm like, I'm going to ask because that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, we have problems just crossing tiny little streets when the park is on the other side. So that was one thing that came up. And then sure enough, we got it switched around and now the park is on the same side of the street as the school, which seems like not a big deal, but I don't know. Like, I did that. So that's kind that was my first like aha moment that something I thought of made a difference. Um, and something I could do better. Some people, because Dominique was such and Ken are really good with their newsletters and things.
Right.
So they ask, they're like, do you have a newsletter? And I'm like, no, but if that is something that people want, then that is something that I can say that I can do. That I have control over. I can promise that I could do that. Some things I can't promise everything, right? But I mean, that's something that I could definitely do if it was wanted.
Okay. Again, that I could do socials better, but that's fine. Maybe to wrap up and just to bring us back full circle, um, I'm sure a lot of people have talked to you about like running for city council, even if they do intend on running for your seat. But um, for people who are thinking about running, or maybe people are just thinking about the job, I mean, what is it that you've learned from being on city council that you think would benefit others who are like considering the job or would like to run? And Linda, I will start with you on that. What's sort of a lesson you've learned that could be applied to the next term?
Time. As Catherine already spoke to, you need a lot of time to not even FaceTime, showing up at events and things like that. Huge amounts of reading and following up with staff and so on. So I would say I probably spend the equivalent of 4 days a week just on materials and emails and those kinds of things. And it's not, I try to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday because I've also got public health and social services, try to block off those days to do that work. But then you've got the weekend. You've got the weekend where you're at events. We were just at a Pride flag raising here at Westwood School. Things where the community wants to feel valued and have you there. So it's very time consuming, and you have to do justice to the role by giving that time.
Catherine?
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. One of the capacities I used to work like my full-time job plus weekends plus the school board trustee. So this has just kind of shifted everything. So my weekends are actually free. I don't technically work, but that's when I'm doing all of the events. And I actually love that I have that ability to participate and give back to the community in that more meaningful way. But yeah, time and commitment. Like you have to do the work.
Well, our work and our time is done here today, so I will just say thank you to Linda and thank you to Catherine for taking part in this little therapy session slash maybe exit interview, maybe I don't know what election interview, whatever we're gonna call it. But thank you so much, ladies, for your time
And
today.
stay on so I can take a photo and then I'll social media it out, okay? Let me get my phone and do that.
That would be remarkable. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay.
Thank you so
All
much,
right.
guys.